Alright, so for this podcast, we have basically gone through two ways to solve quadratic formulas. Okay, so let's do a quick little review. Okay, so we've learned two ways to solve quadratic equations. We've learned to solve it by factoring or by using square roots. Okay, so remember, the key is to remember when to use which way. Okay, the first way we started this chapter was with square roots, and that is when you have your equation in this format. Okay, you have the a term with the squared x, you have the constant, but you don't have the middle b term. So if it looks like that, we can just use the square roots. We use factoring when we have the equation in standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So if it looks like that, we're going to use factoring and factor it out just like we did in chapter 10. Okay, so the way it's set up is going to tell you which way to do it. Alright, so the first equation says x squared minus x minus 6 equals x. So if I think about it, this is in standard form. I'm just going to factor it out. And this is an easy one to factor because it is the a is 1. Alright, so we need to factor this out. It's still equal to 0. So remember, this is my c. My c is negative 6. I need all the ways I can make negative 6 by multiplying. So I can do, because it's a negative, one number is negative on the multiplication. So it can be negative 1 times 6. It can be positive 1 times negative 6. It can be negative 2 times positive 3. Positive 2 times negative 3. That's the only ways I can make 6. But now I have to add it up to make a negative 1. So if I go through my pairs here, if I add these up in my calculator, negative 1 plus 6 is positive 5. 1 plus negative 6 is negative 5. Those don't work. Negative 2 plus 3 is positive 1. 2 plus negative 3 is negative 1. This is my pair. That's going to give me what I want. So x squared is my x times x. And then one term is positive 2. One term is negative 3. Okay? So that's the factoring from last chapter. But now remember, we need to actually solve for x. These are equal to 0. So from here, remember what we do is we split these into two separate equations, set them equal to 0. So I have x plus 2 equals 0, and I have x minus 3 equals 0. And then I just solve for x. These are really easy. Get the x by itself by doing minus 2. So here x equals negative 2. And then for this one, x minus 3 equals 0. Opposite is plus 3. Alright, and then here I have x equals positive 3. So my final answer is x equals negative 2, comma, positive 3. Alright, so that's how we can do that one by factoring. Okay? Alright, number 2. I have 3x squared minus 9x equals 0. Now this one, it's not in standard form because I'm missing the constant, and it's also not in this form because I don't have my constant as well. Okay? So if I look at this problem, think about what I can do to simplify it. So I'm factoring out, I'm taking something out. So what I can take out of both of these, I can divide both numbers by 3. And I can also take an x out of both. So I'm going to divide a 3 and an x out of both terms. 3x squared divided by 3x is just 1x. Negative 9x divided by 3 is negative 3. And that equals 0. Alright, so that's the only way I can factor that one. So now I got these two terms. So once again, you split them, set them both equal to 0. This term is just 3x. It's not a binomial, it's just a monomial equal to 0. This one is x minus 3 equals 0. Solve them. Okay, even though they're short and easy, solve them out. 3x is times, opposite is divide by 3. Those cancel out, so now I have x equals 0 divided by 3. 0 divided by anything is 0. And then x minus 3 equals 0. Add 3 to both sides. X equals positive 3. So my final answer, the two solutions are x equals 0 and positive 3. Okay? And last review. Now we have x squared minus 49 equals 0. So look at how this is set up. It's not in standard, there's no b. It's like this, so I can just solve this with my square roots. So we're just going to solve it for x. Isolate the x, get rid of minus 49 by doing plus 49. Okay, so that gives me x squared equals 49. Now remember, the x is not quite by itself yet. I got to get rid of this exponent, the squared. So the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root. So do it on both sides. Square root of x squared is just x. The x is finally by itself. Square root of 49, if you don't know that, punch it in your calculator, but it is a perfect square. It gives you 7. But remember, when you have a square root, it means two possible answers, a positive 7 and a negative 7. You can write it like that, or you can write it as separate two numbers, 7 and negative 7. All right, so those are the ones that we can solve that way. So today we're going to learn a new way to solve. Okay? All right, so here the notes say, so far we've learned 2 techniques for solving a quadratic equation. We just reviewed those. Today we will learn the 3rd technique for solving a quadratic equation. And this is called using the quadratic formula. Okay? And this will find what this is going to find here are, basically when you use this, you're finding the x-intercepts. And there's another word for that. Remember way back in chapter 3 on functions, another word for x-intercept are the zeros. Okay? And that's basically what we're finding here anyway. Okay? But once again, that's what we're finding with the quadratic equation. Okay? Or quadratic formula, I should say. So once again, a quadratic equation, we've been looking at this a lot. That's the standard form for a quadratic equation. All right? So I can solve any quadratic equation with this quadratic formula. And this is a long formula. Okay? So write this down real carefully so you have it. This formula is a fraction. Okay? The top of the fraction is negative b plus or minus the square root. Now inside the square root sign, it's got all this inside of it. B squared minus 4 times a times c, 4ac. The bottom is just 2a, 2 times a. Alright, so this is the formula. Now here's the thing, you will not have to remember this. This will be on the formula sheet. So on the SOL, this will be on a paper. Okay? So don't worry about memorizing it, you just have to know how to use it. Okay? And once again, this can be used to solve any quadratic equation. Okay? But the reason why we're doing this is we're going to encounter some quadratics where you can't factor it. And so this will be the only way you can solve it. Okay? But even if you can factor it, you can still use this. Okay? So basically, these letters are important. You're going to plug in your b value, the number in front of the x, here. You're going to plug in your first number a in front of the x squared, here and here, and then your constant goes here. And like we said ever since chapter 1, when you substitute, okay, remember this most important thing, you need to substitute with parentheses. Okay, if you don't, it's going to throw your answer off. Alright, and then the other thing that's important that we've talked about this chapter, because we're taking the square root of all this, it gives you 2 answers technically, positive and a negative. Alright, so we'll kind of show you how to actually use this. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of skip this stuff about the discriminant. You don't really need to worry about that. Okay, but here's what the discriminant does. Okay, and I'm going to show you an easier way. The discriminant basically tells you the number of solutions or answers. It doesn't give you the answer, but it tells you how many you should get. Okay, so an easier way to do that is to just use your calculator. Okay, and remember the number of solutions is the x-intercepts. Okay, and we kind of talked about that on the last podcast where when we solved it, your answers for your x is where the parabola touched the x-axis. Okay, so if you look at the graph, you can see how many places it touches the x-axis. Alright, so we'll come back to this in a second. If you go to the next page, so basically here are the 3 possibilities of how many answers there are. Alright, so if you go to your y screen and if you graph the quadratic equation, if the parabola looks like this, you can see that there's 2 real solutions because it touches the x-axis in 2 places. Right? Or this could happen. If your parabola looks like this, there's no real solutions because as you can see, it doesn't touch the x-axis anywhere. Okay? And the last possibility is one real solution. This parabola touches the x-axis in just one place. Okay, so using the graph can help you predict, should I have two answers because it touches in two places? Should I have one answer because it touches in one place? Or does it not touch the x-axis, which means there's no answer, which you can kind of also call empty set again. Okay, so let's do this. Go back to problems 1 and 2. Those are the ones we skipped, and based on the value of the discriminant, describe the solution. So rather than the discriminant, we'll use the graph to just describe the solution, not to actually find the solution yet. All right, so let's come back to this page. Let's look at this page, this problem. Number 1 is x squared plus 9x plus 14. All right, so let's get your calculator. Do this with me. So we're going to go to the y squared screen, the y equals screen, so we can graph. And let's just punch in the quadratic. Number 1 was x squared plus 9x plus 14. Okay, hit the graph button. Let's see what our parabola looks like. And you can see, so how many places does it touch the x-axis? It touches it here. Here, there's two x-intercepts. Okay, so all we need to really put here is that this has two real solutions. Just to kind of get you familiar with that wording. Sometimes they say how many real solutions. It just means how many answers. Two answers. Okay, it's just that easy. The calculator just gives you the answer. You just have to know what you're looking for. All right, let's try number 2. X squared plus 5x minus 6. So let's go to our calculator, go back to the y screen. Let's clear out this first one, and let's punch in the second equation. X squared plus 5x minus 6. Let's graph this, and let's see how many solutions this one has. Alright, so as you can see here, once again this has two solutions. Okay, once again it won't always have two solutions. Alright, so always just double check. This has two real solutions because there's two x-intercepts. Alright, just that easy to use your calculator. Alright, so now let's kind of come back and practice using this quadratic formula to solve. Okay, but just to practice what we just did here, we'll kind of do this first to predict how many answers we should have, and then we'll solve it and make sure that it matches up. Okay, alright, so back on this page, let's go to these practice problems. Okay, so once again, don't write what I'm doing here right now. I just want to show you why we have to use the quadratic formula here. Alright, if I try to factor this, okay, if I try to factor this the way that you already know how. Now look, my a is not 1, it's 2. Remember, the easiest way to fix this is to divide out that term. But I can't divide everything by 2. I can't divide 3 by 2. So remember, when the a is bigger than 1 and you can't make it 1, we're going to have to graph it, factor it this way. Remember, you have to do your a times c. So here my a times c is 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. So that's the number I'm going to use to get my pairs, right? Negative 16, I can, remember it's a negative, so one number has to be negative. So I can do a negative 1 times a positive 16, positive 1 times a negative 16. I can also do 2 times 8. So that's a negative 2 times a positive 8, positive 2 times a negative 8. And there's one more way. I can do 4 times 4. So I can do negative 4 times positive 4. Here, the other combination is the same thing. So then, remember, I have to find the pair and I have to split the middle term, right? So if I do this one, I need to add up to make a negative 3. Negative 1 plus 16 is positive 15. So that one does not work. 1 plus negative 16 is negative 15. That doesn't make my negative 3. Negative 2 plus 8, positive 6, doesn't work. 2 plus negative 8, negative 6, doesn't work. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So I am unable to factor this. Alright, and if you kind of remember, back in chapter 10, there was a couple problems in the packet that you could not factor, right? So now, when you can't factor it, this is when you use the quadratic formula, okay? Quadratic formula will still solve it when you cannot factor it. Alright, so first thing, let's do this. Let's write the formula so you just kind of get comfortable with it, okay? So once again, the formula is negative b plus or minus square root of, inside of the radical is, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, all that over 2a. Okay, so that's the formula. So we're going to go and plug in our numbers. All right, now remember, our a is 2, our b is negative 3. Remember that sign in front is always part of the number, and our c is negative 8. All right, so we're going to go through and we're going to plug all those in with parentheses. Okay, the setup's important. Once we get it set up, we can use our calculator, but got to set it up right. So I'm going to do negative b. Okay, so remember, I'm going to use my parentheses because I'm going to plug in that value for b. And then in here, I'm going to do b squared. I'll plug that in later. Minus 4, parentheses for a, parentheses for c. And this is all in the radical. All that over 2a. All right, let's kind of go back and plug in our numbers. So remember, b is negative 3. So even though there's a negative here, I have to plug in negative 3 for the b. Okay? And then once again, here's my b. Got to plug in the negative 3 in the parenthesis. This number is negative 4a. So a is 2. And c is negative 8. And then all I got to plug down here is my a, which is 2. Alright, so that's the most important part, just getting it set up properly. Okay? Now that we have it set up properly, okay, we're going to get ready to solve it. And we're basically just going to simplify this. Okay? So, we're just going to go kind of piece by piece here. This first part, negative 3, and negative 1 times negative 3, so this just turns to positive 3. Plus or minus square root of. Now what we're going to do here is we're just going to take our calculator, and I'm just going to simplify this whole inside part. Okay? I'm going to do that in my calculator and just get one final number in the radical. Okay? So let's get our calculator here. Let's quit this screen so I can quit. And let's just type in just what's inside the radical with our parentheses still. So if you look back at your paper, it was parentheses negative 3 squared. There's the square. Okay? And then it was minus 4 parentheses 2 parentheses negative 8. So all of that in the radical sign comes out to 73. Alright, so we come back here. So our top is now 3 plus or minus square root of 73. The bottom is just 2 times 2, which is 4. Alright, so we've taken all this, cleaned it up a lot. Okay, now here's another very important step. And you kind of were doing this when you were solving before. This is really two problems in one. Alright, this really means 3 plus square root of 73 divided by 4, and it means 3 minus square root of 73 divided by 4. Alright, so let's just kind of write that out. 3 plus square root of 73 over 4, and 3 minus square root of 73 divided by 4. Okay? Now that I've got it simplified all the way here, I can just put this all in my calculator and get the value. Okay? So, go to our calculator. Now, it's a fraction, so the best thing to do is to set it up as the fraction, right? Use the boxes. Shortcut to get to the fraction, do alpha, the green button, and then your y equals. See this menu, number 1, n over d, that's your fraction. Enter there. So now that I have my boxes, okay? Now I don't have my paper up, but look back at your paper. The top just says 3 plus square root of 73. Right? That's what the top is cleaned up to. Done with the top, go to the bottom. The bottom was just 4. Hit enter. So this answer is 2.886 long decimal. Let's just round it to the first decimal. So this 8 will make this 8 round up. So the first answer will be 2.9. Okay? So let's come back here and write that down. So this equals 2.9. Okay? Now we got to go back and do this one. Okay, now here's the thing. You actually have to do this. I know we're just changing this plus to a minus, but that's not going to make this a negative 2.9. Okay, it's going to be 3 minus this divided by 4. It's going to be a totally different number. Alright, so let's come back here. Put it in as a fraction. Remember shortcut, alpha y equals. Choose number 1, which is n over d. and not just type it in the same, but with a minus. 3 minus square root of 73, go down, and bottom is 4. And you'll see it's a totally different number. Now we got negative 1.386, etc. Round it to this number, look at the neighbor. 8 tells this to 3 to go up to 4. Okay, so this will be negative 1.4. Alright, so let's put it all together. So our answer, x equals positive 2.9 and negative 1.4. That's the final answer. Okay, so it's a little more work, it's a long formula, but if you just go step by step, it'll work out. Okay, and that's why we couldn't factor this, because the answers were not whole numbers, they were decimals. Alright, once again, you don't have to have this memorized, you just got to know how to plug it in and use it properly. Alright, so the key is plug it in carefully. When you simplify it, split it into two problems, one for plus, one for minus, and you're good to go. Okay? Alright, let's try the next one. Okay? Negative 3x squared plus x plus 5 equals 0. Alright? Oh, and I forgot to do this. Let's start this now. Before we solve it, let's first use our graph to predict how many answers we should have. Alright? So let's go back to our calculator and punch this quadratic equation in. Alright, so let's go to our y equals, clear it out. So this first formula, that is first number is a negative 3x squared plus x plus 5. Let's graph it. Let's take a look at our parabola. It's upside down, and that's okay. But you can see that it touches the x-axis in two places. So we should have two answers. Alright, so let's keep that in mind. I'll make a little note to ourselves here. Okay, so up here I'm just going to put in my head, my thought bubble, there's two answers. Okay? Alright, so now let's get our equation written down again. Okay, just so we're comfortable with it. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And once again, remember, we're going to plug in, here our a is a negative 3, here our b is a positive 1. And if you need to write the 1, go ahead. There's not a number, coefficient. And lastly, our c is a positive 5. Always remember your signs are super important. Okay? Alright, let's get this thing ready to plug in. Negative, always have the negative in front, whether the b is positive or negative. Parentheses just for the b value. Plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. All that over 2a. Alright, let's go back and plug in our values. So b is 1. So negative b, I'm going to put a 1 here. This was b, I'm going to put a 1 here. Right after the 4 is my a, so I'm going to plug in a negative 3 here. And after that was a c, which is a positive 5. Then on the bottom, after the 2 is a, our a is negative 3. Okay? So now remember, we are going to use our calculator to make this look a lot easier. Okay, we're going to simplify everything inside the radical with our calculator. But let's simplify the rest of it too. So a negative times a 1, we can just write that as a negative 1. Kind of get rid of those parentheses, clean it up. Inside the square root, so we're going to go to our calculator and type in 1 squared minus 4 times negative 3 times 5. Alright, so let's go back to the screen, second quit. Alright, so this problem, inside the radical was, well, like we said, and type it in with parentheses, just like you have it written. 1 squared minus 4, parentheses, a was negative 3, close them, parentheses for the c, which was 5. Enter, and the calculator tells us all of that will simplify to 61. So our radical just has a 61 in it. The bottom is just 2 times negative 3, negative 6. Alright, done the hard part, we're almost there. Remember, this is really two problems in one, so we're going to split this. This means negative 1. Whoops, fix that. So this means negative 1 plus square root of 61. All of that divided by negative 6. It also means negative 1 minus square root of 61. all of that over negative 6. All right, so now we just let the calculator do the rest for us. We're going to go punch in each fraction and see what the final answer is. All right, alpha y, to get that fraction bar, choose number 1. All right, so the top of the fraction is negative 1 plus square root of 61. Go to the bottom, and that is just negative 6. Let's hit enter. Got this long decimal. Round it to the first place. The next number is 3. That means we do not round it up. We keep it where it is. So it'll be negative 1.1. Alright, so this one is negative 1.1. And let's go type in this one. Alright, get our fraction again. Alpha y. Enter our number 1. Alright, so now we're going to type in negative 1. Now it's minus square root of 61. And the bottom, go down, is just negative 6. Hit our enter. 1.468. We're going to round it to here. Look at the neighbor. This number 6 tells you to round this up. If the next number is 5 or higher, you always make this go up. So that'll be 1.5. So finally, x equals negative 1.1 or positive 1.5. And remember what our graph showed us, we should have 2 answers, right? And we do in fact have 2 answers. Okay? Alright, so on the next page we got 4 more just to kind of practice together here. Okay? So, tell you what, I'm going to run out of time on this podcast. I'm going to end this podcast here, but I'll have a second podcast for those next 4 problems here. Okay?